Have you ever noticed that, like, sometimes you get this lump in your throat and you just can't swallow? Or like a wave of anger that just, I don't know, seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like we have all these hidden emotions inside that we're not even aware of.
Yeah, it's actually more common than you'd think. We're kind of taught to just push down uncomfortable feelings, right? Just keep calm and carry on, that sort of thing.
But then, like, where do those feelings go? Do they just disappear?
Well, according to Bessel van der Kolk and his book, The Body Keeps the Score, they don't. He says our bodies, they hold on to these memories of trauma, even if our minds have tried to totally bury them.
Oh, wow. He doesn't just, like, rely on people's stories, right?
No, not at all. He brings in all this scientific research, brain imaging, psychology, to show how trauma really impacts us, like physically.
One of the things that really stuck with me was this idea of speechless horror.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain that a little more? I mean, I get that sometimes you're so overwhelmed you just can't find the words, but what's happening in the brain?
It's pretty incredible, actually. Van der Kolk found that when people are having flashbacks, the part of their brain that's in charge of language, Broca's area, it like shuts down.
So they literally can't speak.
Yeah, it's not just a saying. They really lose the ability to say what's happening.
It's not just an emotional block, it's like neurological.
Right. It's like their brains are saying, this is too much. We can't deal with this right now.
Wow. And this doesn't just affect language, right?
No, it can really mess with the amygdala too, which is like the brain's alarm system.
Oh, so it's like your smoke detector going off every time you make toast.
Yeah, exactly. It's constantly on high alert, thinking everything is a threat, even when it's safe.
That must be exhausting.
It is. It makes normal life really difficult. Like Van der Kolk talks about how women who have experienced abuse are statistically more likely to be victims again.
Oh, that's awful. It's like a terrible cycle.
Yeah, it just shows how deeply trauma can affect how we see the world and how we act.
It makes me think about alexithymia. Have you heard of that? It's where people can't identify their own emotions.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's actually really common in people who have experienced trauma.
Is there a connection there?
Definitely. It's like the emotional part of the brain just shuts down to protect itself. It's been overloaded and goes numb.
It's not their fault, it's just how their brain is coping.
Right.
So the emotions are there, but they're locked away, hidden. Which brings us to repressed memories.
Yeah, this is where things get a bit tricky.
Van der Kolk talks about the case of Paul Shanley, the priest who was convicted of abuse based on repressed memories. That was a really controversial case, wasn't it?
It was. It brought up a lot of debate about how accurate these memories really are.
And there's still no scientific consensus, right?
Yeah, it's complicated, but, you know, whether the exact details are accurate or not, Van der Kolk and other experts agree the body remembers. Even if we can't consciously access the memory, the impact is still there, emotionally and physically.
So even if we can't remember, it still affects us. Yeah. So where does psychedelics fit into all of this? Are they like a magic cure for trauma?
Not a magic cure, they could be a powerful tool to help us access and process these varied experiences. It's interesting, research into the therapeutic potential of psychedelics actually began back in the 50s and early 60s.
Wow, really? That early?
Yeah. Researchers like Willis Harman and James Fadiman were studying how LSD could help with things like alcoholism and anxiety.
That's amazing, but then it all got shut down, right?
Yeah, for a long time. But now there's this renewed interest in the therapeutic potential of these substances.
But it's not as simple as just taking a psychedelic and hoping for the best, right?
No, absolutely not. One of the big things they learned back then, and it's still important today, is the idea of set and setting. The person's mindset and the environment they're in are crucial. It's not just the drug, it's the whole context.
So the psychedelic is like a tool, but the real work happens within the person.
I think that's a good way to put it, yeah. That's why books like The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide can be so helpful. They give you practical guidance on how to approach these experiences safely and intentionally. It's all about preparation, integration, and having support.
And I guess it's important to say that psychedelics aren't for everyone. Some mental health conditions could make it risky.
Absolutely. It's not one size fits all. You have to be cautious and work with qualified professionals.
So we've talked about LSD, but what about other psychedelics? Like ayahuasca is getting a lot of attention.
It is, and for good reason. It's a traditional brew used in South American ceremonies, and it contains DMT, a powerful psychedelic.
Yeah, I've heard about ayahuasca. It sounds intense.
It can be. One of the things that's unique about it is that it often involves a lot of physical and emotional purging.
Purging? Like physically?
Yeah. The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide actually has a story from a filmmaker named Michael Bees, who went through an ayahuasca ceremony. He said it was one of the most difficult experiences of his life, but also incredibly insightful.
It sounds like it's not just about having a trip. It's about facing your deepest fears and shadows. like really intense therapy.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. And this brings us to the idea of transformation. The research isn't just about reducing symptoms. It's about profound shifts in perspective, values, even a person's sense of self.
So it's not just about fixing what's broken. It's about like reaching your full potential.
Exactly, tapping into that ability we all have to heal and grow.
This is fascinating. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's so much more to explore. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to dive deeper into other pathways to healing, like darkness retreats, and talk about what it really means to unlock those repressed emotions.
You know, you saying unlocking those emotions, it really makes you think about what that actually means.
Yeah, doesn't it? We've talked about some pretty intense stuff like ayahuasca. Are there less extreme ways to like access those hidden parts of ourselves?
There are. You mentioned darkness retreats earlier. Those are totally different.
Can you explain what a darkness retreat is for those who haven't heard of them?
Sure. Basically, you spend a long time, could be days, even weeks, in complete darkness, no light at all.
Wow.
It's about getting rid of anything external and creating space to really look inward.
Honestly, that sounds a little scary. But I can see how it could be really transformative. Do you just like sit there in the dark?
No, it's not passive. You let your mind wander and explore your inner world without distractions.
I guess it's like when you're lying in bed trying to sleep and you finally put your phone down.
Yeah.
Your mind starts going to all these different places, like the darkness retreat is just amplifying that.
Exactly. Without all the information and stimulation from the outside world, your senses become more sensitive. You start to see things differently.
So we've got these two very different approaches. Psychedelics are like a key that unlocks those hidden doors, and darkness retreats are more like a gradual descent into ourselves. But they both seem to lead to re-experiencing those buried emotions.
That's a great point. And it's important to remember that neither of these is a quick fix. Healing from trauma, dealing with difficult emotions, it's a journey.
Definitely, and everyone's journey is different. Traditional therapy might work for some, others might be drawn to things like psychedelics or darkness retreats.
And something we can't forget is the importance of support. Trauma often makes people feel isolated and alone. Having people who understand what you're going through can be so powerful.
Whether it's a support group or a spiritual community or even just close friends.
Absolutely. It's not just about individual healing either. It's like there's this ripple effect. As more people explore these deeper parts of themselves, it can lead to a greater understanding of how connected we all are.
That's a beautiful thought. Like we're all on this journey together, learning to heal ourselves and make the world a more compassionate place.
That's the hope, isn't it? To move from fear and isolation to understanding and empathy.
So over on this deep dive, we've talked about the science behind trauma, the potential of psychedelics, even darkness retreats.
And we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn and discover about this.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else from The Body Keeps the Score that you think is really important for our listener to understand?
I think it's important to remember van der Kolk's emphasis on the body. We often talk about trauma as being all in our heads, but he reminds us that it's in the body too.
That makes sense. We experience emotions physically, right? Like that tightness in your chest, the sinking feeling in your stomach.
Exactly. That's why things like yoga, dance, even just being in nature can be so helpful for people who have experienced trauma. They help us reconnect with our bodies and learn to feel safe again.
It's not just about talking, it's about re-inhabiting our bodies and learning to trust them again.
Right. That feeling of safety is so important for healing.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of trauma and the different ways to heal.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, healing takes time. Be patient, explore different approaches, find what works for you.
That's great advice. So what should our listener do next? What resources can they explore?
Of course, I highly recommend reading The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's really a foundational book in the field.
Definitely. And the Psychedelic Explorer's Guide is great for anyone who wants to learn more about psychedelics.
Yeah, it's a really balanced and practical guide to those experiences.
And there's some great podcasts and online communities dedicated to this stuff. Just be careful with what you find online. Always prioritize safety and responsible exploration.
That's good advice.
This has been an amazing deep dive. Thank you so much for your insights.
It's been a pleasure. I hope this conversation helps our listener on their own healing journey.
Me too. So until next time, keep diving deep and remember, you're not alone on this path. You know, as we've been talking about these different ways to heal, it's made me think about this whole idea of unlocking repressed emotions.
What do you mean?
Well, is it really about remembering a specific event? Or is it something more than that? What if it's not about the memory itself, but about re-experiencing those feelings in a safe environment?
Interesting. Van der Kolk talks about how important it is to create new experiences that contradict the fear and helplessness that often come with trauma. It's about finding ways to feel in control again.
Like during a trauma, people often feel powerless. Maybe psychedelics or therapies like EMDR help them re-experience those emotions, but this time with a sense of choice.
Exactly. EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is a therapy that uses eye movements to help people process traumatic memories. It's like rewiring how the brain responds to those memories.
So it gives the nervous system a chance to catch up and process those experiences in a way it couldn't at the time.
Yeah, and in that re-experiencing, there's a chance for healing. It's not about erasing the past, but changing how we relate to it.
This conversation has been so thought-provoking. We've gone way beyond just summarizing the body keeps the score.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, and that's what makes these conversations so great. It's not just about learning facts, it's about really engaging with the ideas.
And hopefully it leaves our listener with something to think about, something to spark their own curiosity.
I think we went on it today.
I hope so. So to our listener, if you're on a journey of healing, be patient, find support, and remember the power of connection. Maybe unlocking those repressed emotions isn't about remembering, but about re-experiencing those feelings in a way that leads to healing.
That's a great way to put it.
Until next time, keep diving deep. So, as we've been exploring all these different paths to healing, it's really got me thinking about this whole idea of unlocking repressed emotions,
What do you mean?
Well, is it really about, actually remembering this specific event? Or is it something bigger than that? Maybe it's not about the memory itself, but about re-experiencing the feelings in a safe way, if that makes sense.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Van der Kolk talks about how crucial it is to create new experiences, ones that contradict the fear and helplessness that so often come with trauma. It's about reclaiming a sense of agency, of control,
So, when someone goes through a trauma, they often feel powerless in that moment. So maybe psychedelics or other therapies like EMDR can help them go back and re-experience those emotions, but this time they have a choice.
Exactly. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It uses these bilateral stimulation, usually eye movements, to help process traumatic memories and decrease the emotional intensity. It's almost like you're rewiring how the brain responds to those memories.
So it gives the nervous system a chance to catch up, to process those experiences in a way that it couldn't at the time of the trauma.
Right, and in that re-experiencing, there's a chance for profound healing and integration. It's not about erasing the past, but about changing how we relate to it.
This whole conversation has been so thought-provoking. We've gone way beyond just summarizing the book.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, that's for sure. And that's what I think makes these conversations so valuable. We're not just taking in information, we're really engaging with the ideas.
And hopefully that leaves our listener with something to think about, something that sparks their own curiosity.
I think we've achieved that today.
I hope so. Well, to our listener, if you're on your own journey of healing or self-discovery, remember to be patient with yourself. Find those resources that support you, and never underestimate the power of connection. Maybe, just maybe, unlocking those repressed emotions isn't about remembering at all, but about finding a way to re-experience those feelings so they can lead to healing and wholeness.
I really like that.
Until next time, keep diving deep.